This is Rita Dairit and this is Buhay Parang Life, where we discuss issues about this thing called life. Thank you, my dear viewers, for tuning into this episode. I invite you to please like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel and Facebook page. Buhay Parang Life is part of FaithWatch TV, and I ask you to download the FaithWatch app on your mobile device. We read and value your comments, so please feel free to write down your comments and suggestions below. We have today with us a fellow trustee of Pro-Life Philippines Foundation. He is a lawyer. His competency is in international law, constitutional law, and philosophy of law. Right now, he sits as Dean of UANP Law. He is also a columnist and has written many books on constitutional law and international law. Marami pong ginagawa ang ating bisita ngayon, and I'm very happy that he has given time to be guest in Buhay Parang Life. Please welcome Atty. Jemy Gatdula, or Atty. Jemy as we like to call him. Hi, Jemy.
Hi, Rita, and thank you to all the viewers. Thank you for coming here, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
So, Jemy, mainit na usapan ngayon sa kalye, Pride March, Pride Month, mainit na usapan sa Congress at sa Senado at sa ating mga family and life advocates. SOGIE Bill, you are into constitutional law. Is this even constitutional, itong hinahain nilang bill na ito?
As a concept, and then as written right now, yung sa mga the drafts or the verses that we've seen right now, I think it's pretty clear na hindi. And for a huge number of reasons. And the main reason I could think of right now, parang at least for the viewers is why even have it in the first place? They can't even, for example, the advocates of the SOGIE can't even mention ano ba yung rights na nade-deprive sila over. I mean, what rights do they have that, for example, you and I, Rita, do not have? They have the same exact rights. And then if they're going to have a law that will give them so-called rights that they say are not found in the Constitution right now, essentially what they're asking for are not rights, but essentially privileges. And this is something I was mentioning in my article regarding the Supreme Court when they decided to celebrate yung Pride Month. Why is it that other society members of society, women's group, children, indigenous peoples, the Muslim group, and all of that, and definitely mga Christians and Catholics, why have they not been given a month to be celebrated by the Supreme Court? And yet itong LGBTQ, of which the SOGIE Bill is supposedly to embody something about, is binigyan an entire month by the Supreme Court. And so for me, no, unconstitutional siya because we already act on the rule that everybody is supposed to be having an equal access to justice, access to rights. Right. And so therefore to be given an extra number of laws for me is already questionable pagdating sa Constitution. Yeah. Yes,
sa ibang country ba, Jemy, may ganyang law, yung extra privileges for the LGBT community is getting bigger all over the world. Sa ibang countries, as you know, meron pa sila mga hinahain na ganyang bill to give extra privileges?
Well, I cannot. It depends on what countries you're talking about. Kasi you're talking here about the Philippines. The Philippines is an incredibly, and I don't care what, for example, some of the more liberal media publications would say. The Philippines is an incredibly tolerant country. I mean, if you're talking of certain countries, for example, perhaps the Middle East or countries of the like that have na yung sistema nila is iba sa sistema ng Pilipinas, it is possible nga that they would require laws na kailangan talaga protektahan yung ibang segments of society nila. Yung sa Philippines kasi iba eh. I mean, despite the fact, and I ask the audience to correct us if we're wrong. A lot of the justifications daw na binibigay ng, for example, ng proponents ng SOGIE is to say that they have been marginalized, they have been discriminated against. They have criminal offenses now have been committed against them. But if you notice, each and every time those papers come out or the articles come out, they don't mention data. Kasi
Walang
if there's- yeah,
parang
if there-
kwento
yeah.
lang.
if there's a criminal offense filed against, specifically against, for example, yung LGBT, there should be a criminal record about that. There should be a blotter. There should be a something filed with the NBI or with the PNP. And if there is an act of discrimination, let's say it's a labor, then madaling mahanap yung data. You just go to the NLRC, the Department of Labor.
Correct.
But we don't see that. I mean, if there were data, we know that the proponents of the SOGIE would have immediately put it there. The fact that even in the explanatory laws, despite all the articles that have been written to support the SOGIE bill, have not mentioned any specific data. They would probably mention data on a worldwide basis.
Right.
But the law is on the Philippines.
Correct.
And as far as I know, how can we say that discriminated or marginalized society of LGBTQ when you have almost even Catholic universities changing their policies in their favor? You have corporations, multinational corporations creating corporate policies and advertising in their favor. You have the City of Manila and other local government units doing Pride Month and other activities in their favor. Pati nga mismo Supreme Court is celebrating Pride Month in their favor. We have several bills in Congress, the House and the Senate, trying to legislate in their favor. For a population that is not probably more than 2-3% of society of the Philippines, and yet ang influence nila is that great, that is not a marginalized community.
Yes, I agree with you. Bakit nagiging ganun ang influence nila? Bakit nga ba 2-3%, you said lang ang population ng LGBT in our community? And from our own experience, nakikita naman natin bakit sumisikat ang mga members of the LGBT? Diba? Artista sila.
Exactly.
Political sila, figure sila.
Yeah.
Hindi naman natin sila binabato.
And they're incredibly protected. You have a member of the LGBT in a major channel, right, who essentially kissed your partner niya, and it became viral sa internet, and everybody was applauding that person. Now, you can't even write anything in criticism of the LGBT because what happens is that you will be trolled, you will be attacked. So they're an incredibly protected, they're an incredibly sheltered. In fact, I mean, you can actually pwede mo murahin ang Catholic Church. You can,
but not them.
But not them. And
right,
we're supposed to all be having equal rights under the law and as far as society is concerned. Now, as far as your question is concerned, why are they able to exercise such a huge amount of influence? We can speculate on that, a huge amount of theories. I think a lot of it has to do with a lot of foreign influence. And I think, and if I can say this directly, I'm not. You're Catholic, right, Rita?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. We are both.
I sometimes suspect that a lot of it is actually hatred directed towards the Catholic Church. For me, it's a worldwide effort, precisely because I think, and this might sound very speculative to your audience, pero ako ang thinking ko is a lot of it is connected to the fact that the Catholic Church is the only one making a strong, committed stand. Well, so far, stand against contraception, against abortion, and against divorce. And a lot of these things, contraceptives, for example, in abortion, and even, for example, in gender transition,
right,
are areas which the pharmaceutical industry can earn a huge amount of money over. And therefore, for me, ang thinking ko is that, well, there has to be a way to weaken, therefore, yung Holden Church. And how do you do that? Well, you chip away at their doctrines. You chip away at the foundation ng Catholic life, which is marriage and the family. So you're protecting marriage, therefore, increase mo yung same-sex marriage. You're protecting your kids, though. Okay, let's have contraceptives or abortion. Or pag na-born na yung kids mo, let's subject them to gender transition para maging transgender sila. For me, that's highly speculative. Pero this is for me an organized. You cannot do this if it were not that organized.
Right.
And there has to be money behind it. And I think one of the things that I could see that is probably a source of the funding would be the fact that you can earn a lot of money for contraceptives, and so on. It is also possible that when you look at the history of Planned Parenthood, which was essentially developed to propagate your eugenics policy, if people look at the Planned Parenthood history, it was developed essentially to weed out yung black population in the US. And there have been reports and there have been discussions that one of the reasons why, for example, in the millennial goals, population control has always been advanced, and people have to remember that the populations, for example, of the US, who walang immigration, the population of the US would have been incredibly old. China's population is old right now. The EU, the European population is old. And then they look at the Philippines and countries in Southeast Asia, and we're having a young, vibrant population. So, and people have to remember, if we became a US state, had the Philippines became a US state in the 1940s, we would have been the biggest US state and we would have controlled the population of the US.
Simply because, kasi marami tayo.
Yeah, because our population right now is 10 million? The population of the US is 300 million. Every single time tuloy magkaroon ng presidential elections, it would have come from us. And a lot of the House of Representatives would have come from us. Now, the point is that our population is incredibly young. So it's something that in terms of productivity, in terms of societal development, in terms of economics, a lot of advantages are coming our way precisely because of our healthy family life, our healthy religious life. And why is it so coincidental na ito yung ina-attack?
Oo nga, you are saying ayaw nila that we are a country with a vibrant and healthy young population?
I just find it. I mean, you could. Your audience is of course very free to disagree sa sinasabi ko, pero I just find it really coincidental and weird. Sabihin ko lang weird. Na a lot of ang dami nating problema ngayon sa US ang dami nating problema ngayon sa Philippines, along with the US, obviously. We have national security issues, poverty issues, and the like. And then why is it that parang one of the main points of discussion in our national conversation is about divorce, is about SOGIE, diba? I mean, people are still pushing for abortion. And obviously, if you are launching a political campaign, as you and I know, particularly when we were running, for example, sa party list, when we were supporting pro-life party list, right. When we were campaigning against the RH law, this requires a lot of funding. You cannot have a choreographed, and you cannot have a very well-messaged position. When you look, for example, at some of our newspapers, Inquirer, for example, or Rappler, CNN, and all of that, you can see parhalos they have almost very well disciplined messaging. And for me, it could be speculative, it could be other, but since you asked, that is one of the things that I'm. It's geared towards controlling the population natin, and at the same time, it's a money thing because of the fact that this is a huge area where could be.
What I'm hearing from you, Jemy, ang lalim-lalim ng pinanggagalingan nitong SOGIE Bill. So may politika. Politics behind SOGIE. Kasi bakit you're saying unconstitutional, hindi ba dapat yung ating lawmakers, unang-una, ang call to them is to be faithful to the Constitution?
Yes, which is, that's why I cannot, I try to analyze where is yung push or engine is coming from. Bakit ang sustained ng push? The SOGIE Bill has been around for several years. So where is the lobbying coming from? Where is the push coming from? And you would not see any articles from the so-called media that we have here saying that perhaps we should be protecting the family, that we should be upholding to the traditional family setup. The the articles are always lauding itong LGBT person na to, this person who came out transvestite or transgender, and the fact that we need to have. But again, I go back to my original point earlier. What exact rights have they been deprived of? As far as I know, I mean, all of us have friends, relatives, or what have you that are members, and I have not come across anyone actually discriminating against anybody.
So
Yeah.
tell our
Everybody is subject to the same policies. Everybody is subject to the same contractual obligations. Like ako, I mean, I would prefer wearing, for example, t-shirt lang and jeans to the office. I have to wear this. So why should, for example, an LGBT member be allowed to wear an attire different from the corporate attire being required, for example, of all of us? Why should we be required to do this, and then they would have the ability to dress up as they want, or have a haircut or hair color as they want? So anyway, I go to the point that I'm making is that why is it that our politicians are so pushing for this when obviously the need or the urgency is not there? There is an urgency on how to manage yung China relations natin, our level of poverty, the fact that we have 57% of our newborn babies are coming out from single mothers. And that would have a huge implication on productivity, because we know that the presence of the biological father is very important in the growing up and development of our children. And yet we are focusing on this. It doesn't make sense. And one has to find reasons why there is this.
So tell us, Jemy, why should we fight against the passage of the SOGIE Bill? Ano ang mga dangers nito sa society, sa marriage and family? Kasi yung iba sinasabi nila, even the young people, kasi kawawa naman talaga sila sa school.
Which is what I was saying earlier. Kawawa ba talaga? Lahat naman tayo tinutukso sa school. For one reason or another. Pag mapangit ang sapatos mo, tutuksihin ka. Pag maganda sapatos mo, tutuksihin ka pa rin. Anong panahon ko nga, pag bago sapatos mo, aapakan yung sapatos mo kasi bininyagan daw eh. I think
correct. Lalo na pag puting rubber shoes.
Exactly. I mean, I'm not making light of people's problems or what have you, but I think we put things in perspective. I mean, if it really were true na naminabugbog because of gender or yung sexual orientation niya, I'm sure there would have been records of that sa school. There would have been records sa Department of Education. There would have been records sa PNP. The fact that we don't show that, we know, so puts a doubt tuloy on the question of meron nga ba talaga tayong problem of discrimination in the country? I would like to submit wala eh, because I know yung Filipino. I know that we are a tolerant society, and we are not like that. So anyway, why is it? Because of the fact that why should we single out a specific sector of society for special treatment when we are built now on the idea that we are all supposed to be created equal? And it goes against, and from there makikita mo, if that is the case, then ngayon na nga lang na we know that there are problems with regard to the equal application of law, dadagdagan pa natin pa uli ng isang privileged class. And by the way, one of the things that I'm arguing for is that, okay, let's assume that there's a need to give a certain extra protection to this class. Okay, ask yourself, how do we prove a person is part of this class? Because I can prove, for example, if you're Filipino, I can just ask for your birth certificate or your passport. How do we prove, for example, if si Juan is actually is gay, or si Juana is lesbian? How do we prove na si Roberto is actually a transgender? Na he enters a bathroom, maskuladong guy, may bigote,
Pero sabi niya, babae siya.
Yeah, how do we prove that he's lying? How do we prove that he's not saying the truth? How do we prove an employer na hindi raw niya tinanggap si Carl sa trabaho kasi homosexual siya? How do we prove that si Carl is homosexual in the first place? Is there a gene? Is there a blood type? Is there a psychological test that can actually prove that? The answer is no. I mean, and so therefore, yung pag-equal application of the law, yung pag-apply mo pa lang ng law, already has a lot of difficulties in it. And yeah.
Naiisip ko, if you ask for proof, sasabihin na naman, discriminating ka. Bakit
So
ka
so it becomes a here, yeah, so it becomes a he said, she said, right? So
Yeah.
pag sinabi ko naman, hindi rin. So bakit kailangan maniwala sa kanyang batas and not sa akin? Diba? I mean, if he's going to be the one, kasi ganito yan, if he's going to be the one claiming na may discrimination, under our rules, kung sino nagkiklaim, siya yung magpo-prove eh.
Right.
Oh, so ano yung pipresenta niyang evidence na discriminate siya because of his gender or whatever? Oh. So again, it presents practical problems. It presents a fundamental constitutional issue of equality and due process, and it presents problems of ambiguity and so on. And then it presents other problems down the line, particularly with regard to the application of marriage, sa adoption, sa children, and all the other contractual matters that we have. If, for example, somebody has a contract na siya si Roberto and then mamaya-maya Roberta na siya, what effect does that have on contractual obligations? And so on and so forth. I mean, if a person pala could change yung gender niya on the basis of yung sa feelings or sa brain, why not age? Why not race? Why not wealth? Why not profession? And so on. It presents an amount of issues na hindi sinasagot ng kabilang side, and the only thing that they would reply whenever these reasonable questions are being asked is for them to say, homophobic eh. But how can you be homophobic? We don't even understand now what you're saying. So,
what is the impact of this on the family life, on the Filipino family? Pag napasa tong SOGIE Bill.
As written right now, it does not allow for amount of conversation that would probably yung sa mga magulang to be able to talk to their children in a manner that hopefully will not violate yung SOGIE. Pag yung mga pare and they start talking about yung mga Catholic beliefs, it may come out as offensive and so on. Then it will also have an impact on the family because of the proper formation. So yung proper formation ng magulang mo, proper formation ng mga religious leaders, and even the fact that, well, if you have a lifestyle that perhaps could lead to a lot of confusion for a lot of people, it would have certain impact. I'm trying to be very careful here. It will have a certain impact not only on society itself, but in the rule of law. If, for example, everything, just one aspect lang, if you're having a law that is very subjective and everything depends on your head. So in 2023, ganito ka mag-isip. And then we will construct a series of rights for you. And then 2025, sasabihin mo, nagpalit na ako ng utak. And then ganito naman ako ngayon. Then what happened to the series of rights that we gave you sa 2023? Diba? And then what about the interlocking relationships that you created in 2023? Tapos ngayon pag 2025, sasabihin mo, iba ka na naman ulit. I mean, we have known, and you can ask any psychiatrist here, that there have been instances na somebody said, hindi, kailan transgender ako kasi babae ako. Although biologically male siya. A few years later, sasabihin niya, hindi, lalaki nga talaga ako. So what happened in the meantime? Nag-create ka ng rights, nag-create ka ng marriage, nag-adopt ka ng children. Do we just disregard all of that now just because you had a sudden change of heart? And why? What would be the effect on that, on the stability of our legal system and on our society as well? Yeah.
Oh, well, one of the things they say, no, that they want, syempre pag yung SOGIE na to, nandiyan na yan yung right to marriage, hindi ba? Kasi nga daw yung pagdalaw sa ospital, or yung katawan, yung remains nung isa because you are not legally the partner.
Then change the hospital regulations. If there's a problem sa GSIS, they change the GSIS regulations. But why do you, we're changing conversation now? We're talking now specifically on marriage.
Oo, kasi sigurado dyan papunta yan, di ba?
Yeah. So if we're talking specifically on marriage, so what is the problem? the fact that yung visitation rights, that require lang the hospitals to increase yung number of people that could be allowed to visit. If, for example, your problem is welfare, GSIS or SSS,
Right.
then revise GSIS, SSS. Diba?
Why may beneficiary ka na ilalagay, not necessarily a spouse.
Yes, well, yeah. So just allow that. But why do you need to go wholesale on the redefinition of something very fundamental? And remember, our constitutional system implicitly recognizes na hindi estado gumawa ng marriage. Implicitly recognizes. Why do I say that? Because even our constitution and our laws say that we recognize marriage as an institution. It did not say na yung estado nag-create a marriage. Ang ginawa lang ng estado, ni-recognize na marriage.
Recognize.
So now, are we saying na yung estado has the right to redefine marriage?
Hindi naman sila ang nag-define in the first place.
Yes, exactly. Hindi naman siya nag-create ng marriage in the first place. We knew marriage is this. When the Constitution was made in 1987, as far as I know, there was at least one homosexual there, openly homosexual member of the CONCOM, that was Lido Broca. Even he did not oppose the definition of marriage later on when the family code came as a one man, one woman. Kumbaga, nobody, if you notice in the Constitution, wala definition of marriage. Diba? The definition came in later on the family code, at the civil code. So the civil code first, and then the 1987 Constitution and family code. So when the Constitution was created, they knew that the civil code's definition of marriage is one man, one woman. The constitutional commissioners did not debate na anymore, is marriage between a man and a woman? No, because all of them
very
at that
clear.
time, it was very clear, and we presented evidence pa nga sa Supreme Court. Look at all the dictionaries in 1987. Webster, kung naman dictionary makita mo, Collins, none of them defined marriage as between two people. All of them defined marriage as between a man and a woman. Now, of course, ang bilis nga lang, biglang-bigla. Now, in this decade, biglang-bigla, it became doubtful. But I mean, but before this decade, or perhaps several years ago, everybody was in agreement what marriage essentially was. And which leads me to another fundamental point. This institution of marriage has been in development for thousands of years. Itong marriage na to na a man-woman, hindi lang siya sumipot past 50 years and then, okay. No, this has been developed for thousands of years, and for thousands of years, yung mga lolo-lola natin, yung mga lolo-lola nila, and everybody else, were all observing, paano ba tumakbo yung marriage? And all of them were trying to analyze, were trying to look at saan ba pwedeng i-improve para makatulong sa marriage, saan ba hindi nakakatulong na policies. Kumbaga, there was thousands of years of continuous policy experimentation on this particular institution. And then all of a sudden, the advocates of divorce and all of a sudden the advocates for same-sex marriage think that they're so much smarter than all the thousands of years of analysts, experts, philosophical experts, theological experts, legal experts. All of them think that they're so much smarter that they can just change the institution just like that, and then walang mangyayaring unforeseen consequences. That's incredibly impossible.
So, Jemy, thank you so much for your insights. Ang dami-dami nating natutunan sa sinabi mong mga negative impacts and the constitutionality, the politics of SOGIE. So, what can we as lay people do? What can we do to fight all these SOGIE initiatives? And what can we do in our own family now when we have young adults in the family na parang naniniwala sila na kailangan ipasa to? What can we do?
You have to speak up, and calmly. I mean, even if, for example, they would accuse you of homophobia and what have you, you speak out, because in the end, yung truth and logic and reason is with you. But why is there a need to be ashamed of the things na alam mo namang totoo, and that common sense tells you is the right thing to do? sometimes kasi there's a temptation to be insecure because of the fact that you have a media personality saying this, or that may mga scientific papers daw saying that.
Right.
But in the end, okay, fine. But these guys are, first of all, we know that the scientific papers should be examined more closely. But even that, set that aside, kahit ba anong scientific papers yan, yung common sense, yung sentido common mo pa rin should run through eh. If it were true, for example, common sense, if it were true that kung hindi mapasa SOGIE, it will depress so many youths and then magkakaroon ng suicide because hindi sila na-accept for who they are, then how come ngayon lang nangyayari yun, samantalang libo-libong taon na ang nakaraan sa atin, walang problem na ganito ng araw. I mean, if it were true na hindi pag-accept ng pronouns ng tao, if it were true na hindi pag-accept ng sexual orientation or gender identity ng tao would cause depression and an epidemic of suicide, how come it never happens at 13th century or 18th century or 20th century? So, I mean, and the reason why I'm saying this is that their argument kasi is that nung araw pa naman, kahit nung unang panahon, may mga LGBT na raw and stuff.
Meron na.
So if that were true, okay, most likely it is, but if it were true, then bakit hindi ganun kalaki yung wala tayong nababalitaan masyado sa history books or data, right, or what have you, na there was an epidemic of suicides or depression. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that as parents, as citizens, as older people, I think we have to be able to firmly say kung ano yung katotohanan. I mean, pasensya na kung minsan hindi ma-take yung truth, pero I think they have to understand na just because gusto mo doesn't mean na it's true.
Yes.
And one thing I'd like to say about my fellow colleagues sa all the universities in the Philippines, ang punto nga ng university is for your students to hear viewpoints na hindi nila narinig sa bahay nila. And then all of a sudden, we're going to say na we're agreeing with them kasi we are concerned na baka ma-offend natin sila. And but how is that supposed to better everybody? The point nga of freedom of speech na pinaglalaban palagi, whether it be leftist or the conservatives, is that parang we could say yung viewpoints natin eh. And the point of protecting freedom of speech is para to protect the viewpoint that could probably offend people. Kasi kung hindi ka naman makaka-offend, kung lahat naman nasasabihin natin we're in agreement with, di para saan pa free speech, di ba? The only reason why you're protecting free speech is kasi baka may masabi ka na maka-offend eh. So therefore, you're entitled to say that even if it's going to offend others. Obviously, I'm not saying to people to be arrogant, to bully people. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying na we be harsh to others. But what I'm saying is that wag mahiya to say kung ano yung katotohanan eh. And I think it's too much na pinagbibigyan natin ng mga tao na baka kasi sumama ang loob or something. But no eh. In the end, I mean, you're a parent. I'm a parent. We know na okay, minsan pag may kinakain na plastic yung anak natin, kailangan natin pigilan eh. Tapos kung pinigilan natin, magagalit, iiyak. But we know ultimately in the long run, it was best na pinigilan natin. And I think we as adults should leave that as our legacy sa ating bayan. Na we stand up for kung yung tama.
Do you have a message to members of the LGBT community?
Yes, that we are all essentially have imbued with us the same human dignity as each other. No one here, at least as far as I know in the Philippines, looks at anybody any differently. Okay, I mean, when I see a person who is a member of the LGBT community, all I see is, especially kung katrabaho ko or estudyante ko, is magaling ka ba sa trabaho mo? Magaling ka ba sa class? I actually honestly don't see it. Diba? And I don't understand why there are some political leaders, celebrities, activists na, I mean, what if I start talking about, or you or whoever start talking about yung mga activities nyo sa bedroom? Well, I mean, obviously that's tasteless. So why should we also listen to what your activities are in the bedroom? It has no relevance to our political life. It has no relevance to our professional lives. If you have a student tapos may teacher na biglang-bigla may boyfriend daw siya or whatever, what does that matter? If I had a teacher, tas babae yung teacher ko, tapos sinabi niya may boyfriend siya, ang unang papasok sa utak ko, why are you even talking about this? Magturo ka na lang. And it would have been the same reaction I would have taken if you have a guy teacher and then sinabi niya may boyfriend siya. I would have reacted the same way. No discrimination. I would have just said, why are we talking about your love life? You teach me math. So what I'm saying is that, look, we're all Filipino, we're all children of God, we have all the same dignity, and so we may have disagreements. You may have certain things that you feel na we need to thrash out. Fine, but I think in the end, well, if we need to talk, then talk. But I don't think it's productive na nagdi-demonize agad tayo na just because we raise certain questions, we have a certain disagreement, na nag-iinsultuhan agad as being homophobic, medieval, or all of that. Because in the end, it doesn't really bring anything. So.
Thank you, Jemy. I can imagine that after this episode, dadami ang followers mo. Where can people follow you and tell us about the books that you have written?
Well, I have I have books in Central Bookstores called No Easy Days. It's a collection of articles that I have. So Businessworld. I have a column, Businessworld, which comes out every Friday. And then I have a book on natural law, which is called Natural Law and the Limits of Judicial Power, which I invite policymakers and lawyers, and also any academic to please see, and hopefully it's useful to them.
Okay, thank you so much, Jemy. Thank you, my dear viewers, for watching this. Remember, speak the truth in love, because it is the truth that will set us free. This is Rita Dayrit reminding you today, haba-habaan po ang pasensya sapagkat ang buhay parang life.